Manhattan's Chinatown, behind the unremarkable facade of a narrow office building on East Broadway, federal agents made a discovery that would send shockwaves through diplomatic circles and intelligence communities worldwide. What appeared to be a standard community association office was, in reality, something far more sinister. A secret police station operated by the People's Republic of China, running covert operations on American soil for years without detection. The operation that exposed this clandestine facility represents one of the most significant counterintelligence actions in recent American history. It revealed not just a single location, but an entire network of foreign law enforcement operating illegally within United States borders, conducting surveillance, harassment, and intimidation campaigns against Chinese nationals and American citizens alike. This was not espionage in the traditional sense. This was a foreign government projecting its authoritarian reach directly into American neighborhoods, operating what investigators would later describe as a transnational repression apparatus hidden in plain sight. The investigation began not with a dramatic tip or a defector's confession, but with something far more methodical. Federal Bureau of Investigation analysts had been tracking unusual patterns of communication and financial transfers connected to a nonprofit organization registered in Lower Manhattan. On paper, the organization claimed to assist Chinese immigrants with administrative tasks like renewing driver's licenses and providing translation services. The reality was far darker. For months, investigators built their case through signals intelligence, surveillance operations, and careful analysis of digital footprints. They monitored encrypted communications flowing between the East Broadway location and servers in Fuzhou, China. They tracked individuals entering and exiting the building at unusual hours. They documented meetings that seemed inconsistent with the stated charitable purposes of the organization. What emerged from this intelligence collection was a portrait of a fully operational police outpost, staffed by individuals with direct ties to China's Ministry of Public Security. These were not community volunteers. They were operatives carrying out the directives of a foreign government on American territory. The facility served multiple purposes, each more troubling than the last. Primary among them was the identification and tracking of Chinese dissidents, democracy activists, and critics of the Beijing government who had sought refuge in the United States. Files recovered from the location contained detailed dossiers on dozens of individuals, including their home addresses, places of employment, family connections still in China, and assessments of their political activities. But surveillance was only the beginning. Investigators found evidence that operatives had conducted what the Chinese government calls persuasion to return operations. These campaigns targeted Chinese nationals living in America, using threats against family members still in China, promises of leniency, and in some cases, direct intimidation to pressure individuals to return home and face prosecution under Chinese law. The implications were staggering. A foreign police force had been operating with impunity in one of America's largest cities, conducting law enforcement activities that violated every principle of national sovereignty and individual rights that the Constitution guarantees. When the decision was made to move from investigation to action, federal authorities planned the operation with precision that reflected both the sensitivity of the target and the potential for diplomatic fallout. Multiple agencies coordinated their efforts. The FBI took lead operational control, supported by personnel from the Department of Homeland Security and representatives from the State Department's Diplomatic Security Service. The timing was deliberate. Early morning before the building would typically see significant foot traffic, but late enough that any individuals inside would likely be present and accountable. Surveillance teams had been in position for hours, confirming occupancy and monitoring for any signs that the operation had been compromised. At the designated hour, tactical units moved simultaneously on multiple locations. The primary target was the East Broadway address, but coordinated actions were executed at residential addresses in Queens and Brooklyn, where key operatives were known to reside. The goal was speed and surprise, denying any opportunity for the destruction of evidence or flight of suspects. The breach at the main location revealed a facility far more sophisticated than its modest exterior suggested. Behind the public-facing reception area, investigators found a warren of offices equipped with advanced surveillance technology, encrypted communication systems, and secure document storage. Computer servers hummed with data that would take forensic analysts months to fully process. Most disturbing was the discovery in the basement level. A small room, roughly 10 feet by 12 feet, contained what could only be described as a detention cell. Bare concrete walls, a steel door with a heavy lock, and fixtures suggesting the room had been designed to hold individuals against their will. While investigators could not immediately confirm that anyone had been detained at the location, the existence of such a space within a secret foreign police station operating on American soil represented a profound violation of law and sovereignty. 2 individuals were taken into custody at the East Broadway location. Both held credentials identifying them as representatives of the nonprofit organization. Both, investigators would later determine, had undisclosed ties to China's public security apparatus. Their arrests marked the beginning of what would become a broader diplomatic confrontation. In the days following the raid, additional arrests were made. Federal prosecutors unsealed indictments against more than 40 individuals connected to what they described as a coordinated campaign of transnational repression. Among those charged were 2 individuals who had been operating in the United States under diplomatic cover, their arrests representing a rare and significant escalation in how America handles foreign government misconduct. The charges were comprehensive: conspiracy to act as agents of a foreign government, conspiracy to commit interstate stalking, obstruction of justice, money laundering. Each count reflected a different aspect of the operation's scope and the harm it had caused to individuals living in the United States. Court documents revealed the human cost of these activities. One victim, a democracy activist who had lived in the United States for more than a decade, described years of harassment. Strangers photographing her outside her home, anonymous messages threatening her elderly parents in Fujian province, warnings that her children would suffer consequences if she continued speaking out against Beijing. Another victim, a former Chinese official who had sought asylum after refusing to participate in a corruption scheme, detailed how operatives had approached him at his workplace, showing photographs of his wife and daughter, and making clear that their safety depended on his cooperation. These were not abstract intelligence operations. They were campaigns of fear, directed at individuals who believed they had found safety in America, who trusted that American law and American values would protect them from the reach of an authoritarian government. The investigation revealed that the New York location was not unique. Intelligence analysts identified similar facilities operating in cities across the globe, part of what China's Public Security Ministry apparently called overseas service stations. The program, ostensibly designed to help Chinese citizens abroad with administrative matters, had been repurposed as a tool of political control and transnational law enforcement. In the United States alone, investigators identified evidence suggesting additional locations had operated or were operating in other major metropolitan areas. Each followed a similar pattern: a nonprofit organization with an innocuous name, an office in an immigrant-heavy neighborhood, staff with connections to Chinese government entities, activities that went far beyond any legitimate community service. The diplomatic fallout was immediate and intense. Beijing denied any wrongdoing, characterizing the facilities as volunteer service centers providing assistance to overseas Chinese citizens. Chinese foreign ministry officials accused the United States of fabricating evidence and pursuing a politically motivated campaign against China. They demanded the immediate release of detained individuals and threatened unspecified consequences for what they described as harassment of Chinese diplomatic personnel. American officials responded with unusual directness. Senior Justice Department leaders held press conferences detailing the evidence recovered from the raids. They released photographs of the surveillance equipment. They described the detention cell. They named victims who had agreed to share their stories publicly. The message was clear. This was not a misunderstanding or an overreaction. This was a documented, proven violation of American sovereignty and American law. The State Department summoned Chinese diplomatic representatives for formal protests. Visa restrictions were implemented against individuals connected to the program. Assets associated with the nonprofit organizations were frozen pending further investigation. And Congress began hearings to understand how such a program had operated undetected for so long and what could be done to prevent similar activities in the future. For the intelligence community, the case represented both a success and a warning. The successful identification and dismantling of the network demonstrated the effectiveness of counterintelligence operations when properly resourced and coordinated. But the very existence of the program, operating for years in multiple American cities, highlighted vulnerabilities that adversaries were actively exploiting. The challenge was not just catching specific operatives, it was understanding a new model of foreign interference that operated below the threshold of traditional espionage. These were not spies stealing military secrets or recruiting assets within government agencies. They were representatives of a foreign police force, conducting law enforcement activities against individuals that the Chinese government considered criminals, but who American law recognized as having every right to live freely. This distinction mattered enormously. The activities documented in the case files did not fit neatly into existing legal and policy frameworks designed for Cold War espionage. They required new thinking about what constitutes a threat to national security and how to protect vulnerable populations who might become targets of foreign government repression. Legal experts noted that the charges brought in the case pushed the boundaries of how federal law addresses foreign government activity on American soil. The conspiracy to act as an agent of a foreign government statute, originally designed to prevent individuals from secretly advocating for foreign interests, was being applied to what amounted to a covert law enforcement operation. Whether courts would accept this application of the law remained to be seen, but prosecutors expressed confidence that the evidence supported their approach. The case also raised questions about the protection of vulnerable communities. Chinese Americans and Chinese nationals living in the United States described a new awareness of surveillance and a new fear of speaking freely, even in their adopted homeland. Community organizations reported increased anxiety among members, many of whom had fled China specifically to escape the kind of monitoring and control that the secret police station represented. Civil liberties advocates called for enhanced protections for individuals targeted by transnational repression campaigns. They urged federal agencies to develop better mechanisms for receiving and investigating complaints from potential victims. They highlighted the need for outreach to immigrant communities who might not trust American law enforcement sufficiently to report the harassment they experienced. For American policymakers, the discovery forced a reassessment of the broader relationship with China. The existence of secret police stations operating in American cities was not compatible with normal diplomatic relations. It suggested a level of hostility and disregard for American sovereignty that demanded a response beyond law enforcement action alone. Some officials called for a comprehensive review of Chinese government-connected organizations operating in the United States. Others advocated for stricter visa requirements and enhanced monitoring of individuals with known connections to Chinese security services. The most hawkish voices suggested that the discovery justified far more aggressive measures, including the closure of Chinese diplomatic facilities and the expulsion of large numbers of Chinese government personnel. Whatever the ultimate policy response, the case had permanently altered how American officials and the American public understood the nature of the Chinese government's activities in the United States. This was no longer an abstract competition between great powers. It was a direct confrontation between fundamentally different conceptions of law, sovereignty, and individual rights playing out in American neighborhoods. The individuals arrested faced years in federal prison if convicted. Their trials would provide additional opportunities to document the scope of the program and the harm it caused. Prosecutors indicated they would seek maximum sentences, arguing that the defendants had betrayed the hospitality of a nation that had welcomed them and violated the trust of communities they claimed to serve. For the victims of these operations, the raids brought relief, but also uncertainty. The immediate threat had been addressed, but many still feared for family members in China who might face retaliation. Others worried that the publicity surrounding the case would make them more visible targets for future harassment. The trauma of years of surveillance and intimidation would not disappear with a few arrests. Federal agencies pledged ongoing support for affected individuals and communities. New resources were allocated for victim assistance programs. Partnerships were developed with local law enforcement agencies to improve awareness and response capabilities. Training programs were expanded to help investigators identify the signs of transnational repression activities. The secret police station on East Broadway now stands empty, its equipment seized, its operatives in custody, its mission exposed to the harsh light of American justice. But its existence serves as an enduring reminder that threats to American security do not always arrive with military force or traditional espionage techniques. Sometimes they arrive quietly, hiding behind the mask of community service, waiting to be discovered. The message from federal authorities was unmistakable. The United States will identify, investigate, and prosecute foreign government operations that target individuals on American soil. No amount of diplomatic cover, no claim of community assistance, no denial from foreign ministries will prevent American law enforcement from protecting American sovereignty and the rights of all who live within American borders. What happened in that narrow building in Chinatown was more than a law enforcement operation. It was a declaration that authoritarian reach has limits, that American soil is not an extension of any foreign government's jurisdiction, and that the promise of safety for those who seek refuge in America means something. The secret jail is closed, the operatives are in custody, and the lesson is clear to any nation that might consider similar activities in the future.
Un saludo, hermanos y hermanas, desde el Monasterio de la Luz de Nuestra Señora de Fátima. Bueno, ya habéis visto el vídeo, ¿no? Yo la verdad es que, como no ha habido nadie que ponga las cosas en su sitio, ¿no? Como todo debería de ser, ¿no? Esto de puertas abiertas, pues yo creo que las consecuencias, creo que ahora más que nunca les estamos viendo, ¿no? Dónde nos ha llevado el socialismo, el comunismo, la izquierda, el satanismo, todo lo más retrógrado que hay, toda más que ignorancia, ¿no? Oscuridad, ¿no? El tema de China yo creo que todos sois muy conscientes, ¿no? De cómo son las cosas, ¿no? Con los chinos, ¿no? Yo la verdad es que vemos muchas cosas en el día a día, ¿no? Y escuchamos muchas cosas, ¿no? Y la verdad uno no deja de sorprenderse, ¿no? Cómo se puede negociar, ¿no? Con los chinos, ¿no? Cómo se les permite que en suelo español pues se pueda hacer pues todo lo que han hecho, ¿no? Creo que hay un gran problema, ¿no? Eso es algo que yo creo que todos sois conscientes, ¿no? Y es de que tiene que estar totalmente prohibido, ¿no? Pues la venta de terrenos, ¿no? Como la compra, ¿no? De empresas, ¿no? Como colocar empresas en suelo español, ¿no? Con capital chino, ¿no? Yo la verdad es que no lo veo. Creo que tenemos que empezar a dejar las cosas muy claras, ¿no? Creo que cada uno tiene que estar en su sitio, ¿no? La China para los chinos, que el terreno que hay allí es grande y extenso, ¿no? Y todos en cada sitio, en cada país hay terreno de sobra para hacer mil cosas, ¿no? Aquí el mayor problema que hay es que lo que quieren, ¿no? Es el control de todo, ¿no? De los recursos, ¿no? De los países, ¿no? Como es en España, ¿no? Por ejemplo, ¿no? O en Estados Unidos, como es el caso, ¿no? El control también, ¿no? De la gente que huye, ¿no? De China, ¿no? De aquel país represivo, ¿no? Que ya veis, yo no sé si la gente ha ido a China, es una cosa que parece ser que yo creo que en los últimos tiempos yo creo que nadie sabe nada de nada, ¿no? Es una cosa, me parece todo tan increíble. Como estoy diciendo mucho en estos últimos vídeos, creo que a qué ha dedicado el tiempo la gente todos estos años, ¿no? O qué ha hecho en su vida, ¿no? Y es una cosa muy curiosa, ¿no? Porque si pasa todo lo que está pasando, como he dicho, es por algún motivo, ¿no? Y creo que es algo verdaderamente increíble, ¿no? Que la gente se tenía que, ahora que tiene unos días más de descanso, ¿no? Entre comillas, ¿no? No olvides que estamos en guerra, ¿no? Pues para meditar en todas estas cosas, ¿no? Que hemos estado haciendo durante todo este tiempo, ¿no? Y es algo que tenía que estar totalmente prohibido, es algo que tenía que ser así, ¿no? Por ley, ¿no? No permitir el acceso, ¿no? Al suelo español, ¿no? A tantas cosas, ¿no? Por eso, pues creo que ha quedado todo como está, ¿no? Arrasado, ¿no? Todo destrozado, ¿no? Y el pueblo español creo que ahora más que nunca creo que está viendo, ¿no? Las consecuencias, ¿no? De cómo está la sanidad, cómo está la educación, cómo está el autónomo. Y bueno, la gente tiene que entender que comunismo o satanismo va unido de la mano, ¿no? La izquierda siempre ha sido lo mismo, ¿no? Siempre se han disfrazado de eslóganes, ¿no? Y al final han hecho siempre lo mismo, ¿no? Porque la historia, lo bueno es que está ahí, todo lo que han hecho, ¿no? Desde los seres de Andalucía, pasando por tantos sitios por España, ¿no? Es lo único que saben hacer es robar, llevarse el dinero, abrir las puertas como han hecho a otros países. En este caso estamos viendo China, ¿no? Pero es así. El daño que han hecho y siguen haciendo es muy considerable, ¿no? Por eso viene muy bien para meditar, ¿no? Y para qué podemos hacer, ¿no? Para solucionar todo esto, ¿no? Yo la verdad creo que soluciones son muchas las que hay, ¿no? Y lo primero es acabar con la Unión Europea, ¿no? Cerrar las puertas de España, ¿no? Volver a las fronteras, ¿no? Y volver a hacer algo nuevo, como estoy diciendo mucho en estos últimos vídeos de esta categoría, ¿no? Para que traer algo diferente, ¿no? Porque las consecuencias yo creo que más que nunca pues todo lo estamos viendo, ¿no? Cómo han destrozado el país y siguen destrozándolo. Y bueno, yo creo que tenéis que entender que es a eso lo que han venido, ¿no? Porque la historia está ahí. Creo que más que nunca la gente que haya leído un poco de historia se va a dar cuenta, ¿no? De que por donde pasa el socialismo, comunismo, pues queda arrasado, ¿no? Se llevan todo, se van de los países y dejan el país en la más mísera ruina. Y creo que cada día el pueblo lo vais sintiendo más, que es el camino que lleva esto, ¿no? Este 2026 evidentemente va a ser mucho peor todavía, las cosas se van a poner muy calentitas y eso es algo muy necesario, ¿no? Porque para que el pueblo reaccione, ¿no? No hay otra. Yo algunas veces, pues bueno, me da un poco de tristeza, ¿no? Que tenga que ser así, ¿no? Pero cuando no hay inteligencia, pues evidentemente tiene que ser por las malas, ¿no? Como fue pues en la guerra civil, ¿no? Cómo se aprendió la lección, ¿no? Y cómo se ha olvidado, ¿no? Es una cosa verdaderamente increíble, ¿no? Que no sepa la gente reconocer al maligno, ¿no? Al que, al que le engañe continuamente, ¿no? En los medios de comunicación, más que desinformación, todo es continuamente toda una mentira, que lo que ha sido todos estos 50 años es todo mentira, ¿no? Y todo más que manipulación, tergiversación, de todo lo que cuentan. Y no tiene nada que ver con la realidad, es algo que es así, ¿no? Esto es demostrable, ¿no? Y ellos lo saben, el maligno lo sabe muy bien, porque el maligno nunca se ha hecho una verdad en su vida, y es algo que es así. Si aquí lo que es el pueblo es el que tiene que abrir los ojos. Los últimos tiempos son precisamente para esto, no penséis que para otro motivo. Es revelación, ya lo dije en mi primera venida, ¿no? Que lo que iba a pasar cuando viniera yo en mi segunda venida iba a ser esto. que es todo justamente eso, para que la gente se dé cuenta, ¿no? Cómo obran, ¿no? Y cómo destruyen los países, ¿no? Y para eso es en los últimos tiempos, ¿no? Para abrir los ojos, para darse cuenta, ¿no? De todo lo que te han contado es una mentira, ¿no? Que lo que quieren es, bueno, eliminar al mayor número posible de criaturas de Dios, como están haciendo. Y eso es algo que creo que más que nunca lo estáis viendo y es muy evidente, ¿no? Y la única manera de salir de todo esto es con líderes azules. No penséis que es con nada más. Tienen que ser líderes azules, líderes, líderes enviados por Dios, porque son los únicos capacitados, ¿no? Para poder solventar todo esto, ¿no? Yo con todo esto lo que pretendo es que la gente despierte, ¿no? Que cada día seamos más en la Cruz Azul y el núcleo nacional, que son, digamos, esos dos pilares, ¿no? Necesarios, ¿no? Para estar ahí las consignas, ¿no? Y las pautas, ¿no? Del cambio. Y ahí es donde tiene que afiliarse toda la gente, ¿no? Y creo que con eso puede ser que para que os quedéis en meditación, ¿no? Todos aquellos que veis estos vídeos, ¿no? Y la pregunta que os tenéis que hacer, ¿qué puedo hacer yo, ¿no? Para solventar, ¿no? Todo esto que está pasando, ¿no? Y por qué si yo considero, ¿no? Que se pueden dejar las puertas abiertas, ¿no? Y creo que eso creo que es una gran meditación, ¿no? Porque a mí, a las alturas en las cuales nos encontramos viendo todo lo que está pasando, pues creo que las consecuencias cada día son más claras, ¿no? Creo que todo el mundo está sufriendo la situación que se está viviendo ahora mismo, ¿no? Una cosa muy importante en todo esto es que no tengáis miedo, porque esto se va a ir caldeando más todavía, ¿no? Y cada vez van a ir pasando muchas cosas y van a saliendo más noticias, ¿no? Pues muchas de índole, pues claro que mucha gente se preguntará muchas cosas si son reales o no son reales, ¿no? Y tendrá que tomar una determinación, ¿no? Con todo esto, ¿no? Si sigue pues al arco parlamentario, ¿no? El régimen del 78, o empieza ya pues a desprenderse, ¿no? De todo esto satánico, ¿no? De este panorama satánico que han creado, ¿no? Y empieza, ¿no? Pues a afiliarse, ¿no? A nuestras filas, ¿no? Que son la Cruz Azul y Núcleo Nacional. Y creo que en estos días, como he dicho, viene muy bien para ir replanteándose todo esto y ver qué puedo hacer yo. Y poco más, hermanos y hermanas. Os dejo con la meditación. Un saludo desde el Monasterio de la Luz de Nuestra Señora de Fátima.